Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining again. So, today is the sixth section of the Information Security Training for Catholic Graduates Association of Nigeria, the Enugu branch. And today we'll be looking at networking, the second part of networking, because networking is a very important aspect of cybersecurity. And even though we're not going to cover everything that we need to know in networking, but we should be enough or cover enough that we could use in protecting the information systems that is within our jurisdiction. So we'll start out today. So our agenda for today, first we're going to review what we did in the previous section, then talk about ports, then look at TCP UDP, two very important protocols that actually exist in the layer 4 of the OSI model. Then we'll look at autonomous systems and then summarize and discuss what we should be expecting in the coming week. So, in the previous week, we talked about networking in general, presented what exactly networking is all about. How a packet moves from its source to its destination, then using the OSI model to describe what happens in different layers of the networking process. Also, we also looked at some fundamentals of networking. We looked at some fundamentals of networking, and we also discussed some important concepts in networking that we're supposed to know as information security professionals. Then we considered the OSI model, right? Discuss the different layers of the 7 layers of the OSI model. Then using the OSI model, we also talked about how routing process occurs, starting from the source to the destination, and how packets is being translated or from the different layers from the OSI model, from the source, and a reverse process also happens at the destination. So that was just the general knowledge that we got to look at in the previous meeting. So for today, we'll start out by looking at ports. What exactly is ports? So for us to really appreciate this, I would like to give some analogy and some description of what we need to know about networking. So in network communication, we have that a packet goes in and out of a device physically through the network interface card. On the other hand, a network goes in and out of the same device logically through a program or a service. So a service is a program that runs in the background independent of the login, and that provides some functionalities to a system. Like take for instance a Windows machine. You have a workstation running some service in the background that allows for connections for remote networks. So it is not tied to a single user. So it's always running in the background, right, irrespective of who is actually connected to the system. And when you start, for instance, when you start a web server, what you're doing is that you're starting a specific server service that is not tied to a specific user either. So in Linux, right, this is called also known as a daemon, like a DAEMONX, right? For us to understand this analogy I'm trying to make, let's look at assuming a, a an apartment building, right? When I was living in Poland, I was living in an apartment. The apartment was about 10-story building, right? And in each floor, you have a mailbox, right? And each of those mailbox, you will now have a number. Your house number is actually written on those mailbox. So when you arrive in from the office, you just open your own particular mailbox to see if there is a message for you. You get the idea of what I'm trying to say? So an IP address represents the building itself, while each of these mailboxes represent the ports through which these services will be served. Do you get the idea? So what happens is that when a message, right, is sent, a message is sent through a registered IP address. Now, when the message gets to that IP address, there is a particular port that is going to be receiving that request, and that port in question would depend on the service that is being offered or received. Okay, now to give you an instance, when you open a web browser on your phone, right? Your phone has an IP address, and that your phone have different services that is running on it. You talk about your web browser, you talk about the WhatsApp application, you talk about the different applications you have on your phone. These are different services that is being run on your phone. But this phone has just a single IP address. So when you open up a web browser, this is a particular service you're trying to request. And when you log on and when you just type in the www. any of the server, maybe the google.com, now you're requesting a service from a Google server, and that server is being served on a particular port. So in your own source, there is some random port that will be used, right, for the request. But there is a standard port from the server where you're trying to access that is always used, which is usually port 80. Now, because if you look at the different, if you look at what we have on the slide, if you see that port 80 is a TCP transport protocol, and the service that is being provided is HTTP protocol. That's the HTTP. That is the hypertext transfer protocol. Remember, when you connecting to a server that is not secured, right? When you do the www dots, and if it is a server that is not secured, usually it's going to be HTTP. Now, if you're connecting to a secured server, what you'll be using is not going to be a port 80, but instead you'll be using the port 443, which is a HTTP with a secured socket layer, which is the SSL, right? That's the S that is that is attached after the HTTP. So this time around you'll be using HTTPS. So this is the particular service that will be offered when you're using your browser to try to access a message or information from the web. Do you get the idea now? So we have ports. Those ports are going to be used for those services. Now, you can see in that mailbox is actually is like the ports where the service will be delivered. The service that depending on which of the service that I'm requesting for, right? That is the port that is going to be used. if you get what I mean. So most of the time you have a browser, your browser would open up a random port from 0 to up to 60,000 to request a message from a web server that is listening. The web server will be listening on port 80 if it is an unencrypted, that is the HTTP without the S. But if it's a secured web server, it's going to be using the port. It will be listening on port 443. So if the analogy I just explained makes sense now, then I think if there are questions regarding the ports, then we can reflect on them, and also I would also try to answer them. So there are different services that are being offered, right? Depending. Now we also, if you look at the slide we have here, we have file transfer protocol is going to be offered using ports 20 and 21. For the secured part, if you want to do a file transfer that is secured, you're going to be using the secure shell, which is the SSH, and that is being offered on port 22. For telnet, that is if you want to log into a remote server, right? Most times we use telnet, which is also being offered in port 23. But if you want a secured telnet, please can you confirm that you can see the slide? Someone is saying they can't see the slide.
Yes, I can.
I see the slides.
You can see the slide, right?
I can.
Yeah, thank you for confirming. Thank you for confirming. Nina, please try to check what the problem is from your side, because several people can see the slide. Okay, good. So you can see the different services and the ports they are using, right? So you could look up the different other type of ports, because these are just the most common services and the ports, but you can look up the other ones on the net if you're actually interested in them. So let's just reflect on this before we continue. Now consider a scenario where you are to set up a web server for an organization. Which standard ports may be used? Which of the standard ports may be used? Remember, I think I mentioned it in our conversation here. Just wanted to know if you actually listening. And if there are also any questions regarding ports, you can also ask them. So which of the ports is going to be used if you're going to, if you're looking at the standard ports for a web server? Port 22, no, if you go back to the slide, port 22 is used for file is for, yeah, correct. That is port 80, not 22. Amuche, you correct. Port 80, right? Or port 80 or what? Because there are two types of web server you could have, right? You can have a web server that is secured or a web server that is not secured. So for 443, thank you. 443 is for a secured website. That is why if you see those websites that has HTTPS, right, they are listening on port 443. And websites that just have HTTP without the X, they are listening on port 80. So you should be aware about that. Another important thing you need to know about ports is that sometimes some ports that are running on the background that are not necessary, it's usually advised you should just shut them, close those ports, because those ports can be exploited by an attacker, right? So that is what you need to know about ports. So if there are other questions you need to ask about ports, you can go ahead. So let's see. Remember, during whether it is during the sending of packets from the source to destination. Now, remember that the packets that you send in, the data, you have to have some information. That's the head. You have to have the source IP address, the destination IP address, the MAC address, right? Remember, and also you need the source port and the destination port. That's why we had to talk about ports today, because they are very important. They are just because in the web, in your system, there are different services that are being offered, and these are different ports that will be used for providing different services needed. So any question about the ports? Are there any question? So if there are no question about ports, we can talk about a very important protocol that exists in the OSI model, these are just the two protocols that exist in the layer 4. That's a transport protocol, right? Which is the TCP and the UDP. Now, remember, from the OSI model, right? Data coming from the layer 5, 6, and 7 will be encapsulated at this layer 4, right? So I guess somebody is asking a question. Okay, now we're going to look at that question because it's not related to the ports we are talking about now. I will leave the question at the end of the class. We'll just talk about it. Right? She's asking, how do you identify a message that is a scam without clicking on it? Right? So we're going to talk about it later. But the most important way you could recognize such messages just by looking at the address, the address that is this that's the web link, right? If it is not a familiar web link, that is that is the usual web links that you know that are trustworthy, please, you don't have to click it. Instead, you could just go directly to your web browser and type that, or you can just type whatever it is on Google and see what it comes up with. You could just open Google first, whatever the message is, just type it on Google and see what is going to come up with. You don't have to click directly on the message. You get the idea? What you just need to do is to copy what it is, put it on Google search, and see what Google search can come up with. Then that would help you know what else to do further. Okay. So for the TCP, now there are different sort of messages that can be transmitted from the destination to source, right? Using TCP, you're trying to send a message that you could guarantee that it gets to its destination. If a message is corrupt, that message will be dropped. So for that to happen, TCP uses what we call the tree handshake. First, a message is sent, and the server acknowledges that message, right? Then before the actual message will be sent. Now, get this idea. What tree handshake does is that first it confirms a connection has to be established between this client and the server before the client sends a message. But in that of UDP, you don't need that connection to be established. What you just need to do is to send a message with hope that it gets to to the recipients. You just trust that it's going to get to the recipients. You don't need a confirmation that it gets to the recipient. So there are several locations where what you just need is to deliver a message. You're not concerned about the accuracy, or you're not concerned that that message actually gets to the recipient. You're more concerned about efficiency and not accuracy. So take for instance, in an email, if you're sending an email address, if you're sending an email to a recipient, you just want to be sure that this recipient gets that exact message. So you're concerned about accuracy. So in this sort of situation, you would have to use TCP for message transmission. But in a situation where like this audio, like voice, what you want to do, you just want to send message across, even if the recipient doesn't does not get all what you're saying, right? But at least they can hear you for a while, right? Your own concern is to ensure the message gets across in real time. Do you get it now? Your own concern is to have that message get across to the recipients in real time, right? Because the overhead in TCP, because you have to establish a connection between the client and the server, so the overhead of sending that message is usually high. But in the UDP, there is no overhead because you don't need an established connection. So in real-time communication, that overhead is not necessary because you want to deliver message in real time. Okay, do you know what? I will get back to the ports explanation later. Somebody is saying they didn't get the explanation. I'll get back to it later, but let's just finish up with this, right? So this is about UDP and TCP. So UDP, you have a connection has to be established between the source and the destination to ensure that to ensure reliable transmission of data, right? But in UDP, it is a connectionless sort of communication, and there is no flow control. Your concern in UDP, if you're using UDP for transmission of messages, is that you just want to deliver that message with less overhead. Take for instance, if you're screening a video, right, live video, what you just want to deliver what it is in real time. And also audio communication. You could also agree with me that sometimes you're talking with somebody, even like what we have in here now, because we are using UDP for this connection, right? Some people would get, sometimes it gets distorted. Because our concern here is just to be able to talk in real time. We just want to guaranteeing that it's going to be accurate is not a major concern during real-time communication. Do we get the idea here? So that is the difference between UDP and TCP. And both protocols exist in the layer 4 of the OSI model. So if you have questions about it, then you could go ahead and ask. So, but before we ask, let's think about a situation like you want to offer internet services using TCP and UDP. So which sort of services would be preferable that you would prefer to offer using TCP, and which of them that will be ideal for UDP? Just consider it, and you can share your answer. And also, if you have any questions regarding TCP and UDP, then you can ask. Then for Leo, if you have a particular question regarding the port, you could ask now, then I can now provide a clarification before we continue. Yeah, correct. In TCP, mail services like email, it will be appropriate to use TCP because here we are very much concerned with accuracy. Then, Atobe, you're very correct. For video, like this real-time communication, where we just want less overhead, will be most likely inclined to use UDP. So these are areas where you can use UDP and TCP. Thank you. So, Leo, if you have a particular question to ask, yeah, brokers too. Brokers communication, like where you want to be, Tochukwu, you correct because take for instance DHCP. It also uses the UDP in sending the in leasing IP address for web communication. Yeah, texting, it will be appropriate with TCP because it has to be accurate. Yeah, but the other one, which is maybe audio or video using the texting apps like WhatsApp or the Facebook Messenger uses UDP. So any other question? Do you have, if you have any question regarding TCP, UDP, you could ask. And Leo, if you have a particular question regarding the ports, you could go ahead and ask. So if there are no questions so far, okay, now ports. He's asking about ports again. Ports are used, right, for offering services in your phone or devices, right? There are different services and programs running on those phones, right? Take for instance, the IP address is unique to your phone, but even that IP address connects different services on your phone. To be able to connect to each of those services, now you need ports, different port numbers for each of them. Do you get it now? Ports are more like the mail bus that I mentioned, right? You have a building where the address of that building is the IP address, whereas the mail bus for each building in that house is just like the port that is waiting to accept different services, which represent the different tenants living in that apartment. So that is just the whole idea of ports. Does that make sense? I will mention there are different ports, the different port numbers. Like if you, okay, thank you. If you running a web server, right? That web server will be listening because that web server has a single, that server on its own has a single IP address, but it's going to be running different services. And to be able to recognize those different services, you need port number for each of those services. So that if you get to that IP address, if you get to that web server, then the port will now be able to help you access those individual services being offered by the server itself, because there is one server offering different services. So those different services can be accessed using those port numbers. Is protocol selection, I really don't get what your question is. Protocol selection automatic? I don't get what you really mean by protocol selection. We have that different applications on your on your device is accessing different types of ports, right? They are going to use different port numbers, right? And those different port numbers, it's within they can use between 0 to about 66,000 port numbers, but there are standard port numbers that they cannot use. Those standard port numbers have been designated for specific services that everybody knows. Take for instance the web services. You know that is going to be is going to be accessed using port 80. Not exactly, and to a gateway that connects apps to servers. No, no. Ports are just like uh, a way, right? A way that the different services being run on a device can access a service, because we have a single IP address for that device, but that device is running different services. A way to recognize each of those services, do you get it now, is through using ports. Does that make sense? That, I guess, that's better. Tochukwu, yeah, you close to what I mean right now. Okay, good. So we can continue. If there are any questions about the TCP UDP, you can ask before I continue. So if there are none, so let's look at the last topic for today, which is the autonomous system. Now, this autonomous system would help us understand, or help us as the one. I think you getting close to it. Yeah, just similar, but Tochukwu has a much more better picture of what ports are like. It's just like a passageway through which devices can access services. Yes, right, and also not just access services, and also request services for themselves. So for autonomous system, now the internet on its own, let's internet on its own is more of a connection of, like, interconnection of different autonomous systems. That's different autonomous system connected together. That is the internet. So, but each autonomous system represents a collection of networks under one administrative control, like an ISP or a major entity, right? So in the world now, so far we have about 750 routes, 750,000 routes in the routing table for the whole internet of the world so far. I guess the number might have increased, but that is just to tell you the number of individual autonomous system and routes that connects the internet as we know it. Do you get the idea now? So what happened is that if you register an autonomous system, you receive what we call autonomous system number. So if you receive that autonomous system number, right, you become an independent ISP. You become independent of different ISP because now you are an independent entity. Please, I have to mute you. Somebody is making noise. I have to mute you. So, okay. Now we have, it's more of different individual, like very big organization. Most of them are located in the US. When I say the US, start thinking about the assignment, the question that I asked in the discussion forum, right? About Amuche's trace route that was a bit different from most of the other trace routes that was shared during in the discussion forum. Yeah, so what we have is that I'll come down to look at the questions, but so far let's just continue. Let me continue with the description I'm giving now. So what we have is that what this individual autonomous systems, what they do is to maintain routing tables and exchange this information with multiple ISP. So as traffic is ready to leave an autonomous system, so the routers decide the ISP and which of the ISP connection to send the traffic to for the most efficient packet delivery. Remember the different hubs that you had to see when you run your own trace route. Now, in this autonomous system, as you can see, individual autonomous system uses routing protocols to send messages within themselves. Those routing protocols are called the interior gateway protocols. And we have about the two major routing protocols that is used internally. That's for the individual autonomous system. The open shortest path first, which is called the OSPF, right? And we also have the Cisco Enhanced Interior Gateway Routing Protocol, or popularly called the GRP, right? It's used to determine the best path to take when moving a package from its source to destination, right? And the metrics that these two interior gateway protocols use is bandwidth. They check which one has the highest bandwidth, right? Then they can now use it in moving from the source to the destination. Then the next question would be, now, when the message has to when it's leaving the autonomous system, what happens? Now, there is a different protocol that is used by different autonomous systems to communicate with each other. This protocol is called, it is an exterior gateway protocol, and we just have one protocol that does that. It's called the border gateway protocol, the BGP. That is the only exterior gateway protocol that is used in the entire internet. So that is very important to remember. So if you have questions regarding what I just described now, then we can talk about it here. But before we do that, let's consider the question that I asked in the discussion forum. Now, regarding the fewer hubs noticed in the Amuche's trace route, so what would you think that is responsible? Any thoughts? Any idea? All right, Jared, shoot.
I wouldn't know if it's right, but you made mention of having and what's the last thing you said? Majorly based in US, and since she's resident in US, maybe it's easier to get connected because of the proximity, maybe proximity basis anyway.
Yeah, I think that is one of the reasons, because most of the autonomous systems are based in the US, right? And it is easier because of that proximity. it's easier for them to, locate the shortest path.
Yes.
And in the US, the bandwidth is also very high. Like here in Norway, the system I'm using, we have about I'm using about it has about 130 megabytes per seconds. That is the bandwidth I'm using, which is very high. And in the US, you could even get some service provider using bandwidth that is in gigabytes, right? So that is a good answer. So any question about autonomous system? So if there were any question about autonomous system, then okay, go ahead.
Can I ask something?
Yeah,
Yes, can I ask something?
sure.
Please, because I saw Amuche's own. It was it didn't time her out. So and so notice that you had about 12 or 13 hops. So why did that happen? Is it that the
Leo, you breaking.
it doesn't get that million transmitting packets? So I don't really get it because I tried in many occasions. I said I tried in many occasions to see if I could actually get one that will not time me out, and yet I was unable to do that. So I really get, was it because the main servers or the network are actually located in US or what? I didn't get the explanation.
Now it's going to be, it's also part of it, but the timeout doesn't mean that there is no connection because you have internet already. You get it now? So the timeout might be maybe, there is what they call TTL. You remember TTL? Leo, you remember the TTL, which is the time to live, right?
Yes, I do.
Time to live. There's a particular
Yes.
Number it is set to. Now, when that number elapses, even though finally the packet still pass through that router, right? But if that time elapses, that's when you get the timeout. Do you get it now? So the only issue is that it's taking a bit longer for the router to respond, but that doesn't mean that it's not responding. Do you get it now? Because there is what we call the TTL, which is the time to live that is set. So if the time it takes the router to respond, if it passes that specific time to live, you get that timeout, even though it still passes through, even though it still gets a reply back, but the time is taking longer than expected. So that's
the timeout doesn't really mean that the information wasn't.
No. It just means that it's taking a bit longer for the message for the router to reply.
Okay.
Yeah, because
but it doesn't mean that.
Okay.
I said so. The timeout doesn't really mean that the packet didn't return.
No,
it's just the longer aspect.
Yeah, it's taking just longer to respond.
Okay.
Yeah, not that it did not respond because there is a particular the TTL is set to a particular time, right? So if the router doesn't respond given that time, it just gets that timeout. But that doesn't mean that it did not respond.
Okay. Thank you.
Someone is asking if there is any autonomous system in Africa. Tochukwu, unfortunately, no. Most of them are located in the US and very few in Europe.
Why? Is it that we are not technologically inclined or what?
It's
It means
because
that we
of
don't have that.
ICT.
It means that we don't have that sort of resources. There are several. There are several reasons. Also, power is also another problem, because you would also want to ensure that the system is supported 24 hours, right? And several reasons. Also, the resource, which of the telecom company has that muscle to build an autonomous system in Africa? Very few. So even though they do, they have other things that they are more concerned about for now.
Okay.
So if there are any other question,
Yeah, just to add to, since this is an enlightenment session,
okay.
so Amazon, which has the service called Amazon Web Services, which is a cloud provider. So
Mm-hmm.
they recently launched a branch in South Africa, but that's coming late because they've been in existence for more than 10 years.
Yeah.
So usually Africa is coming on board, but again, just as you said, most of these are housed here in the US. And what they do is to create something they call edge location, which
Yeah.
is something that can
But
actually,
not, but still, it's still within their
yes,
autonomous system, which is located in the US.
yeah, they just
So
give you
you
an
can't
antenna
call
kind
that
of.
one, you can't call the one in Africa a separate autonomous system. No, it's still
No, no,
part
no,
of the
no.
bigger autonomous system that you
You
have
are
in
correct.
you have in the US.
You are absolutely correct. Yeah.
And
Just
another thing I also suspect is because most of the innovation started in the US. You get it now. And they've spent that resources already to build those infrastructure. So anybody that is going to spend that kind of money to build additional sort of infrastructure in Africa, I really, because it's going to cost very huge amount of money, billions in dollars. So it's not something easy.
it's also a rich system. So what do they care about the black
Hmm.
man? So it's only Africans that can do that for themselves. That's
Yes,
it.
yes. Hmm. So somebody is asking a question. You say you read a question. Okay, I read a report on who provides internet service to the ISP. I don't get the question.
Can
Emeka,
can I
please.
clarify myself?
Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Hello,
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
hello.
Yeah, Nemeka, you
Can I
on?
speak now?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, let's go. Okay, yes, I read a report on who provides internet service to the ISP, like a Verizon, Amazon, and so on. Verizon and all those ones that will link up to the local internet service providers in Nigeria. And the explanation is not very clear. They were saying that I didn't get it. Say, well, is it just a satellite that relates this to them? Do they pay for such internet service that will be mortgaged to the local internet service providers?
Yeah, sure, they pay. They pay. Look at it now. We have different autonomous systems. Those autonomous systems, what they do is to connect their different routers, right? So what internet service provider does is that it buys internet from those autonomous systems.
Mhm.
Like it buys like a, what do I say? It's just like a passage, a route path.
Mhm.
Do you get it now? Because
Yeah.
if you're going to use the internet, you're going to pass through one of these autonomous systems.
Yeah.
So what they do is they pay for the services for passing through those autonomous systems.
Mhm.
Do you get it now?
Yes.
Yes, well, because when you're passing through them, you have to pay. They will provide you access to, to use their autonomous
The
system.
question I asked, sir. The question I asked. Who now provides to those at the top? Is it that they link straight to satellite or what?
No,
those
you
at the
don't
top
get
will
it
now
now.
give
Let me go back.
Etisalat
Let me
and
go back
MTN will get
now. Look at it now. Nemeka, can you get me? Can you see the diagram? Can you see this? Can you see this slide now?
Yes, I'm seeing.
Good. Now,
Yes.
what we have in the internet is that each of this autonomous system, right? Each of them, they have their routers. Do you get it now? And they connect to each other. They communicate. Their different routers communicate with each other using the interior gateway protocols, right? Now, and they would have to communicate with these other ones. These are big systems. So the connection of these big systems together, that is just the internet. So as an ISP provider, what you just do is to pay one of these autonomous systems to be able to pass through their own autonomous system to be able to use the internet. Do you get it now? So how they connect their own system together is their own problem. Right? Whether they are using satellite or any of these things now, right? So how they connect all their systems together is their problem. So what you just need to do is that you want to use their own system to be able to connect to the internet, because the internet is just the connection, the interconnection of all these autonomous systems. So for you to be part of it, you just need access from one of these autonomous systems to be able to be part of the internet. Do you get the idea?
Okay. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I've got it clear now.
Yeah. So that's just the whole stuff here.
Thank you.
No, the charges MTN and Etisalat, what they bill you is that what they bill you, they are also paying to use these autonomous systems. This is business. You pay them, they allow you use these autonomous systems. So they also pay the providers of this autonomous system for them to keep maintaining their own systems. You get the idea of what you're paying. But the challenge in that of the MTN, you're paying for data instead of bandwidth, which is a bit risky. Like in abroad here, most of us, what we do, we pay for bandwidth. What I just described was the bandwidth I'm using here. So most times we connect our television is a smart television, is connected to the internet. So we use Netflix, watch the video, any video we want, or we use YouTube, and every other system, my phone, my laptop, any device that even there are people who their fridge is also connected to the internet, their microwave is connected to the internet. So we just have a broadband access here, which is different from what most people have in Nigeria. So, but I'm even thinking about how I can also introduce such a thing back home. But I think that would take a little while before one could actually for such goal to materialize back home. But it's going to be an interesting one too, because many people complain about the data they are paying for internet using the MTN, Etisalat, and the rest. So, if there are other questions.
So now
So if you have any other question. Okay, now, so what we have done so far is to review the activities of the previous week. Then we also have discussed some of the concepts that are, very important for us to know that we talked about in the previous, we studied in the learning week, and we also did some reflections. So for the coming week, what we'll be looking at will be system administration. So Nonso will be helping us with that. So I guess by tomorrow, thereabout, he will going to provide us with materials, and the coming Sunday, he would going to lead the training section. So we'll just learn about some of the basics of system administration that is important for information security professionals to know, right? Then, lastly, we talked about, I provided the link to the training, the information security training, which, based on what I said, now after the training for next week, we just have additional 2 more weeks. So in the remaining 2 more weeks before we start the next section, what we'll do will be to allow everyone to take out time to go through that training program and get that certificate, right? So when you get that certificate after the end of the 2 weeks, now those that are able to provide their own certificates and also participated in the training that we had so far, we can now proceed to the second phase, which is the network security. And in this one too, instead of having classes every week, what we'll do in the next section of network security, because I guess most of us have like a much more better knowledge of what we're talking about in information security. So you can do some self-study on your own for 2 weeks. Then each of this second week, every 2 weeks, we'll now talk about what we learned within these 2 weeks, ask questions, respond to them, and we do that until we complete the training for the network security. I guess that's the way we are going to go for network security. Why we had to do this every week is because this is just the fundamentals, and I wanted everyone to have a good grasp of these fundamentals before we start looking at the much more complex one like the network security and risk management. So if there are other questions regarding this framework that I just mentioned now, you could go ahead and ask. Or if there are any other question regarding any of the training formats or anything you need to know, you could ask now.
Can I say something about the port? Earlier, somebody was asking if the ports are automatic or they are chosen.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say is, even though some ports are kind of automatic, like a web server that is 80 or SSH that is 22, you can also decide to choose for security reasons. Some people, when they want to make their environment stronger, they change the basic port. So even though the port is supposed to be on 80, they choose a different port and make their web server to respond to that port. So it makes it a little bit harder for somebody to be able to penetrate their environments. So even though some ports are automatically or globally known or assigned to use a particular port number, if you are building up your environment, you can choose to change that port. Like in the place where I work, there are some servers that we have, you don't SSH into them using port 22. We choose a specific port and switch it over when we're doing the configuration, just to make that environment a little more secure.
Yeah. This, but those are the other ones are standard ports, right? But ports can still, like the ones you use from the source, can be randomly generated. It can be any ports, right? And as you said, this is more about deception. There is this concept of deception you also can use in security, right? Because you know that the enemy, the attackers know that most people are going to be using port 80. So they would want to, perform the attack using the port 80, right, for a web server. Then you can now try to deceive them and use a different port. Yeah, it's possible one could do that. Thank you, Amuchi, for mentioning it.
Please,
Yeah, sure, you can reach out through Slack too. Okay.
I'm not very clear on the assignment, the personal assignment given. If you can throw more light on that, I'll be very glad.
Now the assignment, what we wanted to do in the assignment was just to see the mapping, right? How the IP address are mapped to the physical address, right? So that was why we asked first what you should have done would be you connected to the internet. First, you ping a particular, take for instance, you ping google.com, right? After you've pinged it, then you run the app command. Then you'll be able to see the mappings, the different mappings of the IP address to the physical address. So that was just the whole idea of the exercise. Does that make sense?
How can I run the? I'm sorry, because to be honest, I'm not conversant with that. How can I run the app command?
Now, one thing I most times when someone contacts me is to ask, did you take out time to read the instructions that we are giving in the link? Because that link is well contained. It gives you step-by-step procedure of doing that, right? But I'm going to recap again just to summarize what we have in that link. First, you have to run your CMD for you to open your command prompt. When you open the command prompt, you now type ping, the P-I-N-G, right? Then you now shift and space and now type the IP address, or the web address, because now IP address is usually difficult to remember. So using www. The website that you're going to, it's usually much more better, because when you when you click do that, the DNS server converts the domain name that you've entered into an IP address. After that ping has successfully been executed, which means there is a connection between your system where you're running the ping to the server you're trying to access. So the next thing is to run the app command, which is the ARP, like shift. You now say slash, that is that not slash, there's those dash A, which if you look at the instructions, you would also see there. When you click enter, you now see the mapping of the IP address to the physical address, which is the MAC address. Does that make sense?
Yes, I now understand. Thanks a lot.
So that's just the way to proceed. But it's always good, just look at the instructions and try to follow the instructions, because most of what you do as an IT professional, you don't even need to cram every of these commands. Just Google and you see those commands. You would always see a problem that someone has resolved somehow. But the main thing is that you need to know what you're looking for. If you don't know what you're looking for, you will not even know how to search. Do you get the idea now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So any other question?
Yeah, can I ask something?
Yeah, sure.
The certification you talked about,
yeah,
would there be a kind of assessment after the training?
Now, that is the assessment is what we are doing through a second using a third party. That is the other system I provided you link with. Do you get what I mean? Malaki, do you get what I mean?
The training body assess participants.
I provided a link to a third party, a training that is the cyber.it. Yes, that is it.
Yes.
Good. Now, when you have to register, right, and go through that course I send you the link to. Register for that course I send you link with. Most of what they are going to explain will be familiar for you because we've talked about them in our training. It helps you going to deepen your understanding of what we've learned, and by the end of it, they will provide you a certificate. At least you can use to demonstrate that you know something about cybersecurity. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
Now, in order to encourage people to do that, we are saying that for you to continue with the next phase of this particular training we are doing, which is the network security, will require you to pass that one. Because we just want to ensure that everybody has some certificates to demonstrate they have proficiency in what we've learned so far. Does that make sense?
Yes. Please, Obiora, I hope that this one will register. I hope it won't be as technical as this one we are doing recently, because at some point recently I got lost. It was too technical that I even read the materials and get more confused. I hope this one will register, won't be this technical.
This one, it also have some videos, right? It's just like it's purely for beginners, so it's not that technical. It's not that technical. But
Okay. Now I have a suggestion.
Okay.
Maybe it's peculiar to me, but I think the recent part of this training, this first section, was a bit technical that the likes of me at the point was lost. Is it possible that the next one, maybe if there is any YouTube video or a clip that can actually portray some of these things, because some of us are in social sciences, we don't have this kind of fundamental knowledge.
Yeah, sorry to cut you, but that is why I provided that link on Slack. That one is purely videos, right? I give you a better explanation, right? So it will be easier for you to follow. Do you get it now? So just the only thing you need to do is that to just take the time, watch those videos. It's all the training aspect is just videos.
Can I add something a little bit too?
Okay.
Yeah. So
all right.
The way things are now, I doubt if there is something that you will not find in YouTube.
Yeah.
And if you are getting confused and you just keep going, it gets to the point that it becomes pointless and useless, because you finish the course and you get nothing, absolutely nothing out of it. So on your own self reading, use YouTube. If you explain something and you are confused about a particular something, just go to YouTube and type that, and you get like 10, 15 different ways that people explained it. And if you go through each and every one of them, at some point you will understand what it's saying. And if you still don't understand, ask questions, because there's no point for you to just keep quiet and keep rolling with the class. Then at the end of the day, it becomes a waste of time for you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Amuche. And I don't think there's anyone that have asked me question that I did not respond to within 24 hours. I tried. Everybody that asks questions, even some people even end up even calling. And if I am disposed at that time, I respond to the call, except at that time I'm not disposed. That's why, and even though I'm not disposed, I still try to reach out when I am disposed to know what exactly the person is asking for. So it's not out of place to reach out to me. I've always tried to respond as soon as possible.
And the truth
Please,
is
I have a
that,
question.
yeah, let me just add this. Sorry for your question. The truth also is that OB is offering us this. This is an advanced class, so to say, and students should collaborate with each other, because when we do this training, you feel that someone else understands it. You can also get in touch with the person, and as Obi said, it's free, and then also a lot of other people in the class are free. Just you have to make effort. This is like a PhD, so to say, you guys are doing. Well, and the truth is that also that Obi is teaching this like he's teaching it like a classroom teaching. We've not really gone into the technical session. It's just like a family teaching for now. So read. You really need to spend like 2 hours every day on this to get it. But if you're not reading and you're waiting for the class on Sunday, you will be losing a lot.
Well, thank you, Nonso.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, someone else wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, I want to ask about the certification. Hello.
Yeah, I did not know what you said.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I want to ask about the certification from Cyber. Like, yeah, is it internationally recognized? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Now, it would help if you can turn off your video and just use just the audio, because you will save some bandwidth. Good, you can talk now.
Okay, I want to ask about the certification from Cyber.
Okay.
Yeah, is it like internationally recognized? Like, can you use it even here in Nigeria or wherever?
Yeah, sure. You demonstrate your competence. If you also look at, have you even tried to click on the website to see what is there? If you click, you will see that several organizations are even are partnering with them, and several organizations also recommends them. So that's why I am bringing it to people to at least have something to show that you have this knowledge.
Okay.
So it's purely for your own benefit, and also it would also help because this time you're watching these videos, and it will help you make sense of all what we've been talking about. So after the next class next week, right? So we'll allow people time within these 2 weeks to take out time, go through the training on the Cyber, right, and get certified for this particular, because the certification they have there for this our own, the one we are looking at so far, is IT, but it's just similar with what we have, what we've been talking about. So it's IT and it's IT and cyber security. Okay, I've seen it here now. So it's more of it's introduction to IT and cyber security, and it's purely for beginners, right? You get it now. So anybody is able to follow this till the end. Do you get? So just try after the next week training. So we'll have additional 2 weeks for you to go through this training on Cyber.it, right? Get the certificate. Now, after you've gotten the certificate, after the 2 weeks, so you're expected to show us the certificate, and also we check the participation, right? Then those that are qualified to proceed to the next section, which is the network security, now will be the only ones that will be left in the Slack channel. So those that are, because we have about 37 participants so far, but I assure you that only about 20 have been active. So the remaining 17 that are not active, Unfortunately, we have to remove them so they stop receiving those messages. I think we are bugging their email by sending them emails about the meeting, and still they are not attending and they are not participating in what we're doing. So we're going to remove those that have not been active, right? So if they really want, they can still join in the next training section. So that's just what we're going to do in the coming weeks. So any other question before we conclude for today? As I said, if you have questions,
Yes,
okay.
I have a question on this certificate. I want you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Can you hear me? All right. I want you to briefly, summarize to us how the certification looks like. I mean, in terms of the sitting for the courses, is it? I know actually it's individual based. Whether I can sit for it today and get it satisfied.
No,
How I can
it's
run it holistically. I just want a summary of how it goes.
it depends on the individual, right?
Yes.
It depends on the individual. What we have here, the challenge I have is that most times when I share a link or share some reading stuff, it does seem that most of us don't take out the time to really read. Now, if
I
you
look.
look at the certification, so it's going to take about 4 hours, 21 minutes
Yes.
for you to complete it. So it's not possible for me to tell you whether you're going to finish it in a day or you're going to finish it, because it depends on the individual. Now, if your interest is just going through the video just to get the certificate, fine, you can do it within a day, since all the videos are 4 hours, 21 minutes. But if your interest is actually understanding and deepening your knowledge of what we've learned so far, you take your time. You can even watch the video again and again to really understand this concept. Do you get it now? I have a training that I have gone through. That training should take up to just 3 hours, but I spent about 2 weeks going through that training because my interest is having a much more deeper knowledge of whatever is being discussed or presented in that training, not just skipping through and getting the certificate. Do I answer your question, Evans?
Oh, thanks a lot for that answer. Why I asked the question generally because a lot of us in social sciences might derail along the line. Oh, thanks a lot.
But why would you derail? It's you followed the course till now, which shows persistence and interest. So that one is really even simpler than what we're doing now, because we've even done the hard part. And I'm sure everybody that has participated actively until now would be able to finish that training and get it. The main idea for that additional training is just for you to get a certificate. That is the overall idea.
Wow, thanks a lot.
Okay.
I know I'm good to go. I'll get it.
It's all right. So any other question? Amuche, it seems you want to say something.
Okay.
Okay. What I wanted to say, you've already covered it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we meet again next week, and I guess we would also have meets within the week. We're looking forward to having the materials from Nonso and also for the training of next week. Thank you, everyone, for making our time to join.
Thank you. I will send the material. I will also call you, Ogiora.
It's
after
okay.
the
It's
break.
okay. I'll wait for your call. All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Have a wonderful week ahead and enjoy the rest of your day. All right. Bye bye.